Okay, good. Welcome again, everybody. This is like, I don't know anymore, like the fifth session or even the sixth session, but in a way we are repeating in the session number 4, like the third time now. The difference today will be that we be doing the setup and basically only the setup. So you'll be seeing a full demo. Of course, we still have the slides. The slides have been updated a lot. But what I will do most of the time, I will immediately start demoing with the installation, because many of you, including myself and also my colleagues sitting here next to me, have been having problems doing the setup, all little problems. And we made sure that we could solve all these problems, that all the issues related to these problems got solved. And we have been doing the setup in the meantime, like a few times perfectly, successfully. And what we wanted to do today in the session is make sure that we show you step by step the installation on how we got it to work ourselves. No magic involved, but at least you see like what I love to call the happy path. And that's what I wanted to have recorded in this session. Afterwards, we'll come back to the slides. To share you some few points that might be new, but again, the session is really about the setup demo. Good. And by the way, I've currently running 2 environments which are currently perfectly working. And what I will do is kill one of them and really start from scratch. So one of the environments is the one you see here, and this is actually the environment that will be killing. And this environment is basically running on a Linux machine sitting next to me. I also repeat that I have ordered a Windows machine. I should have it, I think, by next week or the week after. Whenever I have one, I will also do demos on Windows, of course. Okay, let's get started. So, and I'm also showing you what I will kill, just so that it's fully complete. So in this environment, what I have opened here is a tmux window, or a tmux session basically with 3 windows. And that's basically where we will end up at the end of the demo. We'll see a tmux session with 3 windows, one for at your service, one for the orchestrator, and one for the caddy. And we will be using it because the other part of the demo is about using this thing here, this Insomnia. I've prepared a few extra things for this session, so that you will be able to play with it at large. And probably I will want to share with you this full, nice, structured thing here, so that you can easily test really every single aspect of the REST API without having to set it up yourself. So you see it's all nicely prepared already for you. It's there for you to leverage, and I will share that in the group as a follow-up. Okay, so what I will do, and remember that it took me a while to learn about all that, when you're in a tmux session, like I'm now, you can always detach by pressing Ctrl B, and then afterwards the D for detach. So I'm detached now. So what I will do, well, very simple. I'm currently in a Docker container, basically the Docker container we are about to set up. I'm also exiting this Docker container. And on that Linux machine, which I'm on now, I'm going to first of all list all the containers. There you have them, and the JumpScale 9 one that I was just using is clearly there. So the first thing I always do to start from a clean environment is stop the JumpScale 9 container, right? And then I remove it with the rm command, remove it. Then the next thing I always do, I check the images, yeah? And there you see that you typically always end up with having 5 images. First of all, it's the Fusion base image from Docker on which we built. And then you have all the basically layers on top of it. And it's the last layer, or basically the last image that is being used for everything. So what we do there, I remove also all the images. So by using Docker remove image, and then I specify all the images. in the order of like start on top. So I need to do remove first FF, E8, F8, and then 1B. I typically keep the last one because that one, well, didn't change. It's still there. So as a result, you see then you only have the Fusion image available there. So that's the first thing I typically do. Now, to be fully complete, there is one more thing that I should do. That is, if you go to, I think, the root, there is this this thing we call the, what is it again? The let me do it like that. The dot. I always forget the name. The dot. Wait. There it is. All the dot files. This file, I'm going to delete too, because this one is basically doing the sourcing that I will get rid of too. GS environment, well, remove, well, not ls, of course, remove it. Yeah, and what I could do, I could even exit the session, and I'm now back on my machine. What I typically do is, before I go into the session, I always check SSH the agent, and I check whether basically the key is loaded. So in my case, you see the key is loaded. If the key is not, well, the key, I mean my private key that I typically use on GitHub and everywhere else where I try to log in through SSH, I use this key. If not the case, you typically need to do the eval SSH agent. So basically starting the agent, and once you have done that, you will basically alt your key by doing SSH add. So that's what you typically need to do. So these steps are already done. Once that is done, you will SSH into, well, in my case, I SSH into a machine on which I will be installing everything. And notice here the -A that I typically use to make sure that the private key, my private key that is loaded by SSH agent on my local machine, gets forwarded into the Linux machine over there. A reason, of course, why I'm doing this, of course, also is because I've prepared that machine so that it accepts my my SSH key to log in. So you'll see if I go to the authorized keys on that machine that it's being there. So all very basic stuff. The Linux guys know very well about how all this works. Now then, typically the actual installation, what does it take? It basically, high level, it takes these 4 steps. You need to set up an issue organization and make sure you have an API key. There's no specific reason to do one first and then the other. You can do whatever order you want to. So basically, well, let's make sure that we have done that. So you make sure that in itsU.online you have, so you need to log in, of course. Let's do my two-factor authentication, 705-452, voila. And you make sure that you have, first of all, well, there is no specific order. What you do is you go to your settings and you make sure you have an API created. And it's simple. You do add, you label it whatever name you want to. This is really completely free. There is no specific requirement here, and you don't need to reference this label anywhere. The only things that you will have to reference are the values that you will be setting here. You need to create them, and then you will need to copy these values later on for the rest of the setup. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to delete this because I will use the ones that I already created before in test.org2. Good, so this is done. And the other thing you will need to do, is basically go to the organizations, and you'll need to create a new organization. You create an organization, as I did here with test.org2. And since I'm the creator, I'm also the owner. You should not be owner. Somebody else could have created this organization, and then you would be member, or if the owner decides that you also are an owner, then of course you are an owner. But that's certainly not required. Okay, so that's typically the very first and very simple step that you need to finish. And then we'll do the actual orchestrator installation. I say installation of orchestrator, but actually it's doing a little bit more, as I also detail in the slides, and that's certainly for you to check. Then we will start two AOIS services. And again, I'm not going to go too much into AOIS today, but AOIS is about creating services. And these services typically then do a lot of things. In this case, we will start two services. The configuration server is basically a very simple server that's only holding information. It's not doing actual things. It's only holding information. The bootstrap service is basically the service responsible for seeing that a new 0S node is trying to access the cluster. And it will be the bootstrap service that will authorize that joiner request in the zero-tier network and will make sure that this, well, basically node becomes part of the cluster. And that is checking, as you will see, some conditions before doing so. So the bootstrap service is basically kind of a watchdog, making sure that whomever wants to join the cluster can join the cluster, but he will also check upon some conditions. I'll discuss that later. And then the actual adding of the nodes is what we always have been doing, right? Now for the setup of the ZeroOS, for setting up the orchestrator, as you see, the steps are quite straightforward, and I'll do them right now. So first thing we do is we need to set some variables in this environment. So, so the variables, well, what I always do, I do everything in the temp directory, and please do so too. So that's the best thing you could do. And then you start basically, let me copy paste it, basically specifying the branch. The first thing that you specify as an export is this branch. And the branch, what I mean here is basically the branch. And let me go one step back because I'm of course skipping something here that is quite important. Before doing the cluster setup, you need of course to do the setup of the Docker container. So let's not skip that one. So in my case, we need to export this first thing. So do this first. So this gigdir is basically the directory on your host machine that will basically then hold all the volumes that you will be mounting into your Docker container. So this could be any directory, so feel free to choose whatever you want. I will delete the directory as I was been using it for the previous setup. So this is well done. And then very important, we have been giving you all kinds of information about that, but this is really what you need to do. Make sure you specify the gig branch 903. And this is really about the 903 version of JumpScale. There is also another one, this one, and this is a little bit confusing maybe, but let me explain it. There is another branch that you need to specify, and there you need to specify the branch master. But here we are not talking about the same repository. Here we are actually talking about, let me show you so that you understand, about the JumpScale developer branch. So in the developer branch, in the developer repository of the JumpScale GitHub organization, in that repository, we keep all the setup scripts. And we are about to use the master branch. So you can see it here, the master branch. So not the 900, not the 903, but the master branch of this repository for the scripts. While for the actual at your service environment, at your service 9, and the core components of JumpScale, we are basically using 903. And that's what we specify here with this one, while this one specifies then the branch of the developer, of the master branch of the developer repository. So that's what is different with the setup as we have been documenting it until now. So please do the same. So then you are really sure that you can't run into problems. I removed the old initialization file. And now, and clearly you see here, we are going to fetch from the master branch in the developer repository the new initialization file. And this initialization file or script will basically prepare your environment for doing the actual installation. Huh? No. What did I do wrong again? Yeah, of course, don't forget to use this too. Huh? I did forget that the other time too. Huh? So because I'm referencing here the repo, you need to specify that too, right? Now, you need to download it again like this, and then we will be able to initialization. Yeah? Yeah.
All the documentation that you have in these slides, are these the same documentation that's currently in the Git repository?
The slides, currently the slides are most up to date, yeah? And the setup documentation, the one that Geert sent to you, is also up to date. Let me show you. So if you go to GitHub, and you go to ZeroOS, you go to the Zero Orchestrator repository, and there make sure that you always check out currently, and we are close to go to Alpha 5, but today it's Alpha 4. And in the Alpha 4, you have also the documentation which is relevant for the Alpha 4 release. So make sure that you go to the Alpha 4 branch, also for documentation, go to Setup, and there you have the setup documentation, which is the one which is correct today. So this is really up to date. Huh? So this is really up to date to what you need to do. Huh? Everything it has been reviewed and should work. Huh? And I will make sure that whenever we change one of the branches as the new mix, probably we might say, okay, from now on we take a mix of the Alpha 5 for the orchestrator, and we might still want to use, I don't know, the master for the developer repository, while we might at some point also decide that we switch to 9.10. That will happen quite soon, the 9.10 of JumpScale. So JumpScale, this one, we are, you don't see it here, but quite soon you'll see a 9.10. So not the 903, but the next one is a 9.10, and then we'll make sure that we document that. Huh? So that's small details, but these things are quite important to stay on the happy path, let's say. Huh? Okay, so there we go. So this is done, and then you need to do the sourcing. So it's this thing that is actually doing a lot of pre-configuration and most importantly setting some environment variables. By the way, you also see that you could also go immediately to this step, but don't do that. So don't do that. Just keep on the track. So don't use this one. So the next step basically is that you need to do the sourcing. So let's do that. Voila. And you see when you do that, that it is changing actually the prompt to this new one, just to indicate that you are using this. And by the way, you could see that if you would check now things like the path got changed because of that. And you see in my case that this path got nicely added, pointing to the commands host. So basically that's where you will now also find the next command. So for instance, this command, and also there you see I changed something. I used to specify -L -P. You can still use -L and -P together, but it's not necessary because -P includes basically the -L. Now what is -L? -L is probably the most important one. So even doing -L would be fine. -L basically makes sure that you are not just installing the core part of JumpScale 9. So remember here JumpScale 9, So this is the core part in the core repository, but it also installs like the at your service 9 part. And this is of course a very important part because that's what we will be using in order to set up the cluster. Remember, we will be running 2 services, AYS services. One is the Bootstrap service, the most important one, and the other one is the configuration service. In order to do so, of course, we need the IYS components that are part of JumpScale. What we also specify here is -p. -p will also make sure that the portal part gets installed. For now, we don't need it, but going forward, I will be showing you a lot of nice things that you will want to use for working with AYS, which requires the portal. For now, it's not important, but it's nice that you have it all there. Now, this typically takes a while to get through. While this is happening, you can always, and maybe let me do that, you can always, let me do it like this. I start a new session here, and I go again to this environment. Well, this time, look, I'll do it like this just to show you. There are other ways to do it, of course. Let me check again my zero tier. Let's go to my zero tier because we'll be needing it too. By the way, currently I'm working on this zero tier here. I think this one. Let's check because we'll be adding it here. No, it's not the one we are using, I think. Let me check to be sure. We are on the 7A. Yes, exactly. So on the 7A, okay. And what I wanted to check, the machine I'm using is the Lenovo machine, and I'm just going to copy this thing here, and I'm going to log into the machine like this, right? Yeah, of course, this, for now, it's okay. Don't bother too much about this. Okay, I'm on the machine. What I wanted to show is that you go to the temp directory here, yeah, and on this temp directory you can always do a follow on the tail, watch the tail, and do a follow on the tail of the install progress like this. That's the only thing I wanted to show you. And here you see a little bit more detail of what he's actually doing right now. See? So here you see the summary, and there you see what is happening. Good. So that's important to realize. So while this all is happening, this easily takes like 5 minutes. Let's go back to the slides and see what I can, of course, in the meantime, discuss. Because what will be next, once that is done, we'll start a container. Then we will be going into the container, and then we'll be doing the actual installation. So this part already was done before, and then we'll do the installation of the orchestrator. The point I wanted to make is, when I say install orchestrator, actually it is doing a little bit more than just installing the orchestrator, because as you can see, that's the slide I added here. It's first of all joining the zero-tier network that I specify. So we'll be specifying a zero-tier network, and for now I will again use the same zero-tier network. And then it will indeed make sure that the orchestrator gets started with the RESTful API. So that's of course important. But next to that, also the AYS server gets started. And basically, this is probably the more important one as part of the installation, as you will be seeing. The Caddy server is for the SSL offloading, and that's what you will be using. Before I go back to the installation environment, let's check also this one, the RESTful API. And I made it already included in the slides also here. In the section about interacting with the cluster, I included this link here. And this link is certainly what you will want to have a look to, because it gives you a nice documented overview of all the APIs, endpoints basically, that is exposed by the orchestrator. Don't bother too much about this title. It needs to be reviewed. Also, the version is certainly not correct, but the information you see here about the API is certainly correct. So basically you see here 3 sections. It's a section about the nodes, about the storage cluster, and about the vDisks. Now the nodes, clearly this is what you will always do first. You will check the nodes. That's what you see here. You can always check how it works by clicking it. Here doesn't give you useful information at that level. It shows you basically the code. You don't probably will need to check that, but you will want to check this one. You click that, and there you get the documentation of each of the API endpoints, the way it works, and so on. It's all nicely documented. Now, the first thing we will be doing later on in the demo is of course, check an existing node or list a node, check an existing node, and check, for instance, the state of a node, or you could even reboot a node. It's all there for you to test. Once you have done that, what you will want to do, or you might want to do, is check the storage pools. Why I'm saying that, as you will see as part of the installation, or as part of a join into a cluster, what will happen automatically without you having to do anything is that the at your service Bootstrap service will indeed see that there is a new node, and it will also check the storage of that node. So if, for instance, as was the case with Herbert, you have like multiple disks prepared in that node, like 3 disks in the case of Herbert, or 2, I think it was. I don't remember. It was 3, I think, Herbert. What will happen is that AOS will create one big storage pool on that node, so that these 3 disks get pulled into one storage pool. And why is this done? It will be used to create the 0FS, or the zero file system that we have been introducing in the previous session, so that it gets its caching so the caching layer of the 0FS gets persisted on disk then. So it is basically using the 3 disks, it's combining it into one single mount point, and that mount point is then used for persisting the caching layer of the 0 file system component in that environment. So that is something that is not really documented, but it's certainly something that I need still to document, and that's certainly something that you will see as part of the installation that will have happened, and you might have questions on that, and I will make sure that you understand that. So the build was successful. So we are ready for the next step. So remember, the next step is basically about now making sure that the container is started. So make sure that we are in sync with the slides. So we have done all this. Yeah, so we have done all this, I mean. So now we are going to make sure that indeed the container is started. So what you will see, a few things, if you do Docker images, is that again, these 5 images are there. If you do Docker PS, even with -A, to see all of them, there is nothing. So what we need to do is basically start the first time we need to start the image, and that you do with gymscale9 start. That's how you do it, right? And this will actually then start the container. If you do now again the Docker PS -A or just Docker PS, you see that it is running. And from here on, you can typically do Docker exec minus interactive terminal, and so on. You can basically attach to it and go into it. But we have made sure, as you can see here, that on all interfaces, we basically forward port 2222 to port 22. So meaning we can easily do an SSH into that machine. Again, I typically use the -A so that my private key nicely gets forwarded into the Docker container. So SSH -A root into localhost, and I use the port 2222, right? So there I am. I'm in my Docker container, and from here again we simply follow the next steps, which is basically about making sure that that we first set some variables, and I've nicely prepared that for you. So let me copy all that from my document here. So you see, I specify first that I will go to the temp directory. I make sure that I specify the Alpha 4 branch of the orchestrator. I specify my network ID of the zero-tier network. I also specify a zero-tier token. Remember, the zero-tier token is this thing you see at the level of your account, right? And then you go to API tokens, and that's where you have it. You probably still need to create it if you haven't done that before, and that's how it works, right? And then I specify the test organization too. In my case, remember, that is the organization I created here, for which I'm the owner, and that should be enough, okay? So that's what you need to specify. And then actually we are going to download the orchestrator dash, or the install dash orchestrator script from the 0s0 orchestrator repository, specifying, see, the Alpha 4 branch. So that's important. There it is. And then we basically are going to execute this script specifying these 4 arguments or options that we set. This will go quite fast, and as a result you will see, remember, he will start basically at your service, he will start the orchestrator, and he will start the caddy. Now you see it's blocking at that level. Why is that? Of course, it is basically waiting now for me to accept the join request of this Docker container into my zero-tier network. So I go to my zero-tier network, I go to the correct network, and I think I took this one, yeah. Go down. An issue I had, by the way, just for you, if you create a new network, at some point in time you might end up creating a new network and again assigning the same range. I made a mistake by assigning twice the same range to to different zero-tier networks. It took me like half an hour to figure out that that was the issue. So make sure if you have multiple zero-tier networks that you always check that you have another zero-tier network. It was Jonas that solved that problem for me. I was not seeing the issue. So check what is online. And again, here you see it. There is a new request accepted. And by doing so, you will see that this one will progress once the IP address got assigned by indeed the... Voila, it got assigned. And I always label it. Here in my case is Jumpscale 9, and I label it like Lenovo. Right? See? So this is the Lenovo, right? Good. So this is still working, is doing again some dependencies. Again, you could check, but then you would need to go in the Docker container and so on. You could check the details of what is actually happening again in the log file, as I was doing for the installation or the creation of the Docker images. The same concept is available there for you to check. So this is running. So let's wait for it to finish. And check again the slides, where there is already something I can introduce for you. What I do here as the next step, you will be seeing that I will do the TimX add and just checking that everything is running. So that's certainly something I will be doing. That's a good test whether it went well, and it's also nice to see that it all went well. And then the other thing that we will need to do is creating the JWT or the JSON. And JSON, I should maybe put it like this, not JSON, but JSON web token is what we are going to create. An important thing about the JSON web token already today, realize that the JWT is only valid for 1 hour. So as part of your demos, you might end up in having all of a sudden things that don't work anymore. So this comment that we are about to do next is something that you might want to do more than once. Every hour or something, each time when you want to interact with AYS through the command line, for instance, or each time when you will be using Insomnia, and where you also have to pass for each HTTPS request the JWT, well, you will probably have to recreate this token multiple times. So that's certainly something to remember. So as a result, yeah, go ahead.
I think it was 1 day. 1 day.
Exactly. It was 1 day. It was 1 day. But it's 1 hour now. They changed it. So
okay.
That's thank you for saying so, because that's also the reason why I bring it up. It was 1 day, and now it's 1 hour. So that's the point. By the way, here you already see something else that we will need to do next, but I won't do it now, because we first need to make sure that all the rest is okay. But here you already see that when you will be downloading the kernel, or basically the ISO in this case, you also need to specify the test organization. In my case, test.org2, for which we have been setting up the cluster. And this is, of course, my zero-tier network. And clearly, we used to use master also. Don't do that anymore. As I will explain later, it's important that you specify also there alpha 4. It's an important point. Now, what I wanted to show you, if you do TimX add, or you could also do TimX list sessions, just so that you see all the sessions. There is, as you see, one session, the main. So if you want to attach to it, you just do TimX add. And there you see that we have, as we were started, 3 windows. The caddy one, you will not see much happening there. The orchestrator and AYS. If you're new to TimX, if you want to switch from Windows, again, you do Control-B, and then in my case, go to AYS 0. See? So you see it switched to 0. If I want to go to the orchestrator, Control-B, 1, the orchestrator. Control-B, 0, the AYS, right? So it's all there. Everything is working fine. And I'm going to detach again, Control-B, detach. So I'm back in my normal window. Good. What we will do next, as documented, we will indeed create this JSON web token. So remember, it's u.align that you indeed created. Yeah, I'm going to do it again. That you created an API token with a label which was not relevant, and then indeed the client ID and the client secret. Now that's actually what you need to pass, and that's what I'm going to do here for you. I copy it so I don't need to lose time. So this is important. So I create the new token. I use AYS for that, by the way. So AYS provides this as one of the helpers. This is a very important one in order to go forward. So make sure that you copy this and that you execute it. Why? Because AYS basically is exposing a RESTful API. And in order to use that RESTful API, you need to pass the JWT. Now, the AYS command line tool that I'm about to use now to set up the orchestrator, well, basically not orchestrator, but the configuration service and the bootstrap, is talking to the RESTful API, so it needs to pass the JWT. So the JWT is here now available as an environment variable, and that's why you need to do that. So remember that, it's an important point. Yeah? What I always do here, well, remember that if you would do the next step without going to the correct directory, you would end up with an error. I'll come back to that. Huh? Well, let me also show you this, because I saw also a question about that I didn't answer yet. This is just a website, as you will find many more websites, that allows you to basically inspect a JWT. So let me copy the JWT like this. Huh? Copy it. And then you can go here, you paste it here like this. And then it shows you basically what this JWT is about. I got a question like invalid signature. Why is this? Well, there's certainly nothing wrong, trust me, with the signature of the JWT. It is signed by itsu.online. And trust me, it's valid. The only reason why this site specifies that it's an invalid signature, it's simply because we didn't tell this site about the public key of the itsu.online service. You can configure that here. I'm not going to do that. It's not relevant. But here you see clearly what this JWT is about. It basically tells that it was created for me, and it basically asserts that I'm clearly member of this test.org2. And it is signed by itsu.online, yeah, and it is AZP. I think it's being created for the right organization. This basically nicely shows to AYS that this is a valid call. That everything that will be done through the RESTful API with this JWT in the header will be accepted because of that. Okay, so what's next? You need to go to a specific directory on your machine. It's always the same. You go to optvar, and in optvar you will find this cockpit_repos directory. It's always that one. It's basically hard-coded, and that's basically the directory where we put all the blueprints that we will use to basically provision at your service services or AYS services. Now, for each repository, you will see a directory. And one of the results of the install -orchestrator script is that he will have created this orchestrator server directory, which contains, as you will see in the blueprints directory, currently only one blueprint. We'll look in it in a minute, but the one you need to create yourself is not there yet. So you need to create a new blueprint. So I say, very well, first of all, before doing so, a good test here is that you can always do like at your service, list. And it allows you to list all the services. And you see clearly there is no services at this moment. And by the way, this would not have worked if you would not have done this export first. Just remember that. So what we do first, we create a new blueprint in the blueprints directory, and you can give it any name. So in the documentation we say call it configuration, but it could be any name. It's not important. Also, the extension could be anything. Could be YAML, or in this case blueprint. It's up to you to choose whatever you want. It's not important. So what I will do, I'll copy paste my my blueprint, copy here, oops, right? And to be fully correct, let me change something. Let me maybe delete this line for a moment. Voila. And let me put it back, because it's important what I'm going to do here. Let me put it back like this, because you will have to do this too. Make sure that you specify your value of your JWT here. So in my case, my JWT, well, let's save it first. Let's copy it. Copy the JWT once more. Every character counts, so be careful. All right, put it back. Yeah. Also notice in the documentation I updated it. This one is important, and this one is basically, and it is misleading. Going forward, we need to change this, the name of this key, because this is not a dollar key. This is basically the public part of the signature of itsUonline. So this is like the public signature of itsUonline. And you remember that the website I was just using to inspect this JWT, what you typically need to pass it is this signature, this public part, so that it can verify that this JWT was signed by itsU.online, and that's why you need to have it here too. Now, notice some other very important points here. Make sure to specify here 110 alpha 4. And why is this important? Remember that I already introduced it to you earlier. The Bootstrap will basically accept any join requests from any 0S node that is coming up later, but he will test it against some conditions. And here is one of the conditions. Here we specify that we only accept 0S nodes that have been built from this branch or from this version. So this is important. That's also why when we download the kernel or when we download an ISO file, that we specify not master as we have been doing in the previous demonstration, but we specify 110 alpha 4. If we could put here master, fine with that, but then make sure that you download the master. You could try to do so, but I'm not guarantee you that you will stay on the happy path for now. We are still in development. This is an early adopters program, remember that. So we love you to keep also on the happy path. Going forward, clearly you could put whatever branch you want there and so on. Same thing for JumpScale 9. Make sure you specify JumpScale 903 here, and you have been doing the same thing. These are the lists, or the F list, I should say, of the things we need, or which the orchestrator needs when, for instance, we will be creating this one, for instance, when we create a virtual data center, which will be topic not of next week, but later, when we create a virtual data center, he knows which F list he needs to fetch to create the gateway. This one is about the Open vSwitch. When an Open vSwitch needs to be created, typically in the same context, he will need also some F-list to create the container. And this one will be important for the sessions next week. In the sessions of next week, we will be creating virtual disks, we will be creating virtual machines, and those clearly require a block storage layer on top of the storage provided by a storage cluster. We'll discuss that at length in the next session. And here you see the F list for creating such a container. That's what it is. Okay. Okay, we can safely save this. I hope I didn't make any mistake. Yeah. And the next step is doing the at your service blueprint command. And I could stop there. I'm not going to do that. If I do at your service blueprint, he will basically check all the blueprints in the blueprints directory. And remember, I already had one, which is the Bootstrap one, and I'm adding now a second one. And if I would do it like that, which is perfectly fine, he would immediately execute both of them. But okay, there is no, you can do it like in 2 steps or in 1 step. It's up to you. configuration, right? And this will actually install this blueprint. So if you do now at your service list, you will see that one service got installed. And I'm not going to into more detail about AOIS. You have all kinds of nice AOIS command line comments to go checking on what this all is. And in other sessions, I will show you how we even have a portal for that visualizes all that in very nice looking website. But that's part of the AOIS session that we'll do later. For now, learn to work with the AOIS command line tool just for doing what we do now. The next step is, remember we also had this other blueprint, the Bootstrap blueprint, this one, which got created as part of the install-orchestrator script. So you don't need to do anything. Here you see basically, I haven't introduced you that too much, but typically the structure of a blueprint is always like this. It always starts like with the name of the template, double underscore, and then the actual name of whatever you want to create. And this value is really like, could be anything. If I don't like the name grid, I could put there the name cluster, which would be better, I think, because we typically talk about the cluster. So instead of talking about grid 1, I could name this cluster 1. Feel free to try that. I'm not going to do it right now because I really want to stay on the happy path as much as possible. Here again, I see this zero-tier network ID, the token, and in a blueprint, you could always specify actions. And this is an important one in this case, because what is different about the Bootstrap service compared to the configuration service is that the Bootstrap service will actually also have an active part. It will actually do something. And that's why that in this case, I will not just do an at your service blueprint configuration. I will also do a second step. So I need to do this one, Bootstrap BP. So actually installing the service. Yeah, I install the service, right? So meaning if I would check now the at your service list, I see I now have 2 services. And remember that because later you'll see that 2 additional ones will get added automatically for you. I'll explain that in a minute. Now, I need to do one more thing. I need to do now what we call an AOIS run. I need to create one. And I'm going to do it, well, this time not like in the documentation, so you see what actually happens. I say, go ahead. And he sees, yeah, you want me to check whether there is an installation, action planned for these 2 services. And basically, he even sees that there is also installation available for the configurator. So let's use it. So yes, go ahead and do it. So now he really executed everything. And everything that you have needed to do is done. So everything is fine. Good. I could show you how to check things here, but that's not part of the documentation, so I will not do it. So we are almost done to do the more exciting stuff. So going back to the slides, all this is nicely done. We are basically now ready to add a node. Now, adding a node, remember, that's what I specified. This time, clearly specify this branch. So what I will do, and I think I already did it, I go to the Bootstrap service here. Where is it? The Bootstrap service is not showing here. I need to go to it. Go to the Bootstrap service. So Bootstrap service, yeah. And in this case, remember, I need to specify every single detail. In my case, let me show you. Copy. Specify. I want an ISO. I want to have a kernel of this branch. I want to have a kernel that then nicely connects to this zero-tier network, and I want it to check that it can only work with the test organization tool. Basically, the test is at the side of the kernel, by the way. And this is what we call, by the way, on this last thing, it's what we call a kernel parameter. So you're basically passing a parameter to the kernel, the ZeroOS kernel. So it's being downloaded. And while this is happening, let's again take VirtualBox or whatever you choose to boot. And let me just start a new Linux machine. So, well, it's Linux ZeroOS. Let's call it 7. Huh? Take Linux here, not important. Continue, accept all defaults, right? Like this. Go to the settings. Go to storage. Go to the CD drive or the DVD drive, and choose the image you just downloaded. There we go. Select it. Okay. And start it. Huh? Normal start. And while this is happening, what you do here, you do tmx add. Yeah. Make sure that you're in the AOS screen. So, and there you can follow what is happening, like this. Huh? Right? Let's just follow what's happening. So at some point in time, you'll see that this thing is up. That this thing is will be requesting an IP address, right? So this takes like a few seconds. Also see here this counter, which will be nice when we do the rest of the demo, is 0 containers and 0 virtual machines, so it's not doing a lot at this very moment. Yeah. So this is always like a moment where we need to wait. Huh? That's where I think Mark was hoping to see things happening.
Yeah, I've been doing the follow-on at home here, and now everything's working. I missed the one step at the whole thing.
Okay, I'm happy. I'm really happy. That's really good to know that we are starting to be on the same page. See what happened? Authorize, new member, and there, see, you got the IP address, everything. See, everything worked perfectly. So that's what makes us happy, right, Mark? So let's go to the next step now. So this is cool. Not sure what I put in the documentation about the next step, but the next step then is about interacting with it, because this is all good. So now we are going to interact with it. Remember, I introduced to you the RESTful API, so go through this link, so get acquainted to everything you can do. And there was one thing I wanted to explain before we go through that. One of the APIs in Nodes is that you can create a storage pool. And remember that we basically did that as part of the Python client demos. What I wanted to show you, I do again a detach. And by the way, I love always, I said that I can, let me split the screen, Control B like this, and then I still see what is happening over there, because it's nice if you interact with AYS through the command line, like AOS, and then you go to, and by the way, this will not work. Make sure that when you do so, go to the right directory. So make sure that you go to optvar, otherwise it will not work. Go to the cockpit, the directory, and go to the orchestrator server directory. Otherwise, the AOS will not work. You need to be in the repository that you are about to use. So when I do an at your service list now, you will see all of a sudden, see, this doesn't work. Why does this not work? I need to do the export first. That's another thing that we need to remember. So if you ever have this, it's always nice to see. So let me detach. Let me copy my export command in full, this. Clearly, I could have done this command also here in this session. I'm making it myself a little bit difficult now. So make sure that you go back. I do the export, right? Again, do this AYS list. Et voila. And what I wanted to show you is that there is these two things we already have created ourselves, and he is now also creating other services. I'm not going to go into detail what this is all about, but the storage pool, for instance, just so that you understand, is actually the creation of a mount point in that 0S node that is taking basically all the disks, and in our case there is really only one, and providing them as a mount point that will be used for the caching layer of the 0FS file system. And that's typically where the persisting happens of everything that you do on that machine. So remember that we had this discussion in the past that when you reboot a machine, you lose everything. Well, you would not lose everything, because everything that gets changed in that machine would then go to disk. Now, to be very complete with you, if you do a VI or Vim of the Blueprint Bootstrap, there is, and I don't think it's in it, but it's in the documentation. You could add here an extra thing here that says whenever an OS boots, format the disks. That's also something you could decide here to do, but I'm not going to demo that right now. Okay, next, clearly we want to interact with it. So here are all the APIs. The one I will be using is the one for playing with the containers. Now, it was first introduced by Christophe. We love to use, you could use any other tool. We love to use this thing here, the Insomnia client. I will share with you all this so that you can have it all for you too. Important is that you understand a little bit how to work with it. I'm not going to give a full training on it. You typically need to create an environment. You can create new environments. I created this environment Eve here, and then you can manage this environment. Why would you manage it? Basically, to set up these variables. So what I typically need to now go back to my zero tier and just to be sure, check the network that I'm on. Well, the IP address basically. So this is where my machine is running, right? So I copy this URL, copy. Make sure I put it here, right? So, and that's all. And this one I will be updating later, okay? And when I do then at this level, I go to, and then the other important thing, I go to, in the nodes thing, under nodes at the bottom, you'll see this list nodes. And there, of course, I need also to specify in the right header. So again, I go back here, I copy the JWT. Remember, only valid for 1 hour, copy it. Okay, make sure that you replace all this. You put the word bearer in front of it. Make also sure you put the word authorization there. Then put this one here. Voila, that's all you need to do. And then basically double check here when you do the get, you can click it, that you take the correct URL. This is clearly not the correct one. So let me take URL, right? Then he takes this URL I just specified. Just specify HTTPS, yeah? Well, port, of course, in this case is 443. I think you can skip it, but I have it there, and send it, right? Et voila, he sees this 0S node, which is indeed the one I am using. So here you see the 108, the 189 is clearly the one he sees. The next thing I will want to do, and already copy this string here, copy, because we will need it. Go to the thing like list containers. Let me have a list on all the containers on that machine. Yeah, this is all the information. So this is from a previous call. Let me first also replace the same thing here, Birrer. The correct JWT, correct? Yes? Well, I did do a wrong copy. Huh? Be careful. Go to, again, the list notes. Do Control A, huh? Copy, and go to list containers. Control A, and then, well, paste it basically. Voila. Done. And then make sure again URL is correct. No, it's not correct. It should be, well, this is stupid. This is probably because, I don't know. Yes, because also at this level, I need to specify an environment. As sometimes I do stupid things here. You will learn to work with that. Basically, I think that I can basically delete all this, and then he will, because this is overriding the settings at a higher level. So close this, and by doing so, I guess I can now select, no, I can't. No. That's something I need to better understand. Yeah, so I can overrule. I was hoping really to use this value. Huh?
I think you need to have a closed set of brackets in the environment file under the containers to make it valid. Just an empty set of brackets under your containers.
Here, yeah, on this level?
Yeah, so just put an empty set of curly brackets in there.
Okay, and then it will get accepted. Let's try it. Yeah, and then let's again try URL. And this time, no, it doesn't allow me to. Well, wait, and what URL did I have? Okay, the correct one, sorry. Okay, yeah, thank you, it works now. Okay, and the node, of course, well, let's get back to list nodes. Let's do that, list nodes. And, well, there are tricks, you could call, well, you have to learn to work with it. I'm also learning it. Copy this one. And I also, at a higher level here, I then go to my environment, not here, at this level, go to my environment, manage environment, and I just copy this here, hard-coded, to make it easy for me. Done. And now we go to list containers, right? And I say, for which node? Well, for this node, he recognizes the string, and say, list me the containers. Yeah? There's no container. Okay, that's normal. So not surprised, of course. So we copy this, copy, and we are going to create a container. For the creation of the container, let me show you. Again, URL is correct, port is correct. This time we do it a little bit differently. You see here that there is a way to create an URL or an HTTPS URL that is basically first also calling another one. He's basically calling. I could have done it hard-coded like I did before, but here he's calling like the other one, list the nodes, and then get the first one, and use then the first one as the argument. So specify that node, and in containers I'm going to create one. And here you specify in the JSON what you're actually going to create. So let's call it the my container host name, and here you see I specify the default network, nothing special. It's here that you could specify a zero-tier network first. You could even have a container being linked into the same zero-tier network. And here you specify the F list. And here I'm specifying basically the F list that that we have been using for simply for an go to the hub. Remember the hub? Yeah, and in the hub I go to the Gig official apps, and I'm basically using this one. See? If you click this I, and that's basically the URL we are passing, right? And this URL you pass here, and so basically you are creating a new container running Ubuntu. Send it, Yeah. While this is happening, you'll see. So it was created. So if I check now my virtual machine here, you see there is one container, right? I can create a second one if I want to, like this. Just change my container to Chaka and send it. A second one is created. Yeah, you see this counter goes to 2. The same thing, of course, when I do list containers here, you will now see there are 2 containers. See? And from there on, you can do basically actually everything we have been learning until now. You can check the processes. You can create your own storage pools if you want to. You could even list the zero-tier networks. I could even join a network. Everything is there. You can ping it. You can do lots of things. And the idea clearly is that everything we will be doing next in all the next sessions will go to the ZeroS API. Oh, sorry, the orchestrator API. As what I showed in this last picture I've been creating for you in the past. This one. This is actually what you are basically doing now. From a Python client, we didn't do it from a Python client, but you get the point. You talk to the orchestrator, and the orchestrator is basically going to the zero course of the ZeroOS process. And as part of the next session, what we will do is basically start creating first our own storage clusters. So it might be confusing what I say now. To know, I talked about storage pools. So storage pool is something which happens at the level of a ZeroOS node. And at a higher level, then you will start creating storage clusters, which is basically using the storage available on the ZeroOS nodes and create, remember, RDB, RocksDB combination for basically creating the storage pools. Once we have storage pools, we will then create the storage, the block storage, and that's basically the topic of the next session. Voilà, this is basically the demo I wanted to do. Remember that what I said, the documentation is also updated for all that. What I also did, nothing special, but this recording will end up on the ZeroOS YouTube channel. It's a public channel, so everybody can get access to it. You saw me doing it with the tip of Jonas. Just search for ZeroOS on YouTube and you will end up in the channel. It's public while it should not be public, to be honest, but it was really a burden really to make every session available to each of you. I didn't find any way to do it in a scalable way, so I ended up make it all public. I don't think it's a big issue. We still need to figure out a way to make the slides available in a more structured way. I still need to get all the nice slides or documentation created by Herbert and Arne into the documentation. That's still a task for me. I didn't come to it. Honestly, why? Because I had so many problems to get it all working on my machine to get everything right by today. So that's why. So basically, that's certainly something of the things to do. The glossary, it's not anymore the abbreviations now. I updated it a little bit, so I'm not going to repeat that once again. This was discussed the other time. Also the RAML is there, right? So everything is nicely there. For the rest, the slides are what they were before. I think it's quite complete now, covering everything we have been doing today, and also covering and basically also nicely introducing the next session. So I need to update this. The next session will be, well, on Tuesday, but I will want to do the session on Tuesday afternoon this time, because I have another thing to do in the morning. I will not be available in the morning. The next session will be on Tuesday afternoon, and I will communicate that in the Telegram group. And most probably we'll then do a second session on Thursday or on Friday, talking really a lot about block storage and about storage in general, and allowing you to start creating your own virtual machines and probably start migrating whatever VMware machines that you have or Hyper-V machines and start them up on the ZeroS cluster and seeing how well things work from that point on. Voila, I should stop talking. Voila, do you have questions? Was this useful? I'm happy from my side that it all worked this time without any problem. I think I will start checking now with each of you whether you are at the same point. I think everybody should be able now to set up a cluster, and that's the best condition to go forward to the next session. Voila. Alex, what is your experience, by the way? I haven't talked too much with you about it. Alex? Busy doing other stuff, I guess.
Yeah, sorry, I'm here.
No. Is it did you set up a cluster? Did it work for you, or you still need to do it?
No, I still need to do it.
Okay. But the good thing is, for those that didn't do it yet, is that now you know the exact happy path, and you will not go through the pain some of us had to go through, like Mark and Herbert.
Yeah, I think I found the point in the documentation on GitHub where I got a little confused. So if you're looking under setting up a ZeroOS cluster under the orchestrated docs.
Yeah. This one?
If you scroll down, you get to the configuration part where you run the actual service blueprint configuration BP.
Yeah.
A little bit further. And then, then you get set up the backplane network, which is obviously an optional step.
Yeah.
Then the switchless setup, which is optional for now. And then you get the packet.net setup.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no sort of differentiation between where packet.net setup starts and ends, because I looked at it saying where it says now issue the following command for the Bootstrap service.
Yeah, this should be, yeah, you're right. I was aware of that, and I still need to make sure, that's not good. This part clearly needs to be
separated.
Separated. And by the way, here you see this thing I talked about, the white disks, see? It's, so this needs to be separated. This needs to be like...
That's the piece that I missed, and that's why mine wouldn't join automatically.
Okay, I'll update that today. As part of a follow-up today, I make sure that this is clearly in a separated section. It's not related to packet.net. It's an important step to do, which is nicely documented in the slides, but here it's not well done. Good. Yeah. And for the rest, I think this is all correct. Yeah. Yeah. Good. Voila. Mohammed, are you working from home? Mohammed.
Yes, I'm doing. Yeah.
Okay. And you're doing fine, I guess. Huh?
Yeah, I need just to go through this session and last sessions because I couldn't follow them.
Yeah. And Arne, I know you're very ambitious. You told me about already the next thing we need to do. And what Arne basically told us is that he thinks, and he's right, that we need now to have an F list for the orchestrator, so that people don't have to go through all this pain and setting up all this, and they simply have, because at some point in time you have like a bootstrap situation, you could use an existing cluster and thus an existing AYS environment to basically deploy an orchestrator on another cluster if you have an F list for it. And this F list is created, it's ready. It simply needs to be tested. Nobody has tested it yet. So that's certainly something of the things that we need to do. So I'll discuss that with my colleagues here, whether they can test it. And that we can then set up an orchestrator on another cluster from an AYS. Maybe Arne, you can elaborate a little bit on how you see it? If you're still there, I guess. Yeah, he's not there. Ahmed, maybe you need to say something. Maybe you have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still working on the JS9 Docker. I just installed the Docker now.
Okay.
So I'm going through the sessions now. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
don't hesitate. If you have an issue, if you have a problem, a question.
No, everything going smoothly now.
Okay.
Smooth.
We are all here to support you.
Yeah, sure.
And our ambition is simple. By next Tuesday, everybody should be able to have the cluster and do the next step in their own environment, basically. Yeah. And Herbert, I think you are also fine, huh?
Yes, my class is running. I've done now a completely built from scratch again. What's my there was some issues with the virtual machine, but it's different. The other thing is, how can I make the complete Docker container persistent when I reboot everything? Or
the Docker container, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, if you stock the Docker container, it's not losing data, huh?
We'll stop it.
So it's the same. It's the same issue that I had, that I spoke with Geert with as well. That when you stop the Docker container and do a JS9 start, it actually removes and restarts a container from scratch. So you lose your orchestrator, your caddy, and everything in it.
Yes. Well, yes. And here, thank you, Mark, to say so, because thanks to that, thanks to your input, we did do something new. Let me show you. If you go to GitHub Jumpscale, you go to developer. It should already be the documentation because this new feature got merged into it. If you go there, where is it? We have a new option. Voila, the -R option or the -C option. I haven't tested it yet, but basically, if you would use the JStart option, or you would start again the container using dit, he will not destroy your container. He will ask you whether it's okay to do so. Yeah? Or if you explicitly don't want to have asked this question, you specify the -C. With the -C, he will use the existing container. Does this make sense, Mark?
Yeah, so I did try that earlier, but it may not have been with the version that's been downloaded now. So I will try it again soon and just see.
Yeah. That's
yeah. Okay, the -C command is there now. It wasn't in the previous JS9 start script that I had earlier. So hopefully that works.
I should add it to the slides. I think this is a very important thing to use. And this is basically, and that's always nice to see. And it's thanks to you, Mark, that we added this. So Herbert, thank Mark. Eh? Okay, voila, good. Arne, are you back? No, he got bored. I know Arne, he's so...
Sorry, I'm there.
Okay. Maybe you want to share still something before we close the session?
No, currently not. I still have to set up my orchestrator on the Windows machine, which I'm going to do.
Yeah. And for Mac, it also works, by the way. So I got it working on Mac and on Windows. And on Mac, it was a big issue. We had a lot of things that we had to update in the scripts. So it works on Mac. And Windows should work too, because they tested it on Windows too, they said. So I didn't do it yet. That's my next thing.
Yeah, the Windows container is actually Ubuntu.
Okay.
One last quick question, Yves. Sorry, I don't know if I saw it. The Insomnia setup, is that going to be documented in the slides? Because I'm not familiar with Insomnia at all.
Yeah, it was also my question. Can you export your settings here?
Yeah, I will export these. Perfect. Because this is cool. I will export this and share it in the group as an immediate follow-up to this session. Right?
Perfect.
Cool. Appreciate it.
Okay. Cool.
It's much work to create this.
Yeah, I did. I didn't do it myself, by the way. It was
always cheating.
if you specify the bearer on the on every level, but why didn't you specify it on the top level, or doesn't that work?
Yeah, well, good question. If you can tell me how to do that,
I just add an environment variable, which is bearer, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's possible. If it would be possible, I'd love to know how, because it's cumbersome to always have to do that. Eh?
Yeah.
I'm also discovering this tool myself, and it's I don't know how you can do it. I don't think it can. If you find it, fine. It should, huh? Maybe you could do it like this. I don't know. Maybe you could do, but yeah, and you could maybe, I don't know.
You can edit an authorization. That I did, and I think you
what's the auth there? Yeah.
Then it's possible to use the variable at the bearer.
Okay, I have a specialist next to me, and he offers to find it out for us, and I will share with you, or Jonas will share with you how to do it. Eh? We'll come back to that, because this is indeed something that would make it much more easy. Good.
Just one other question with the JWT token. Is that a static 1 hour that it's going to be available for, or does it sort of refresh its timeout values while it's in use?
Well, by definition, you can make it refreshable. But
normally it should work like that. The last time you use it, it will last for an hour. But as long as you're using it, it will remain up. That's how it should work.
That's how.
Okay. Yeah. No, I was just wondering if it was a static TTL value on it that it sort of expires after 1 hour, or it auto refreshes as long as it's in use.
Okay, I didn't know that. So well, thank you, Arne. I'm going to verify that whether it's indeed true what you say, because that's indeed how it should work. Because
that's what I'm used to, but
yeah, exactly. But I'm not sure whether it's in this case it's auto refreshed as long as you use it. But let's check that, because that's certainly also a very good question. Yeah.
So I mean, for example, if we, if I shut this environment down today and sort of fire it up in a little while's time, do I have to go through and do the at your service token creation again inside the command line, and then have those exported out everywhere?
I think so. Today, I think so. But it needs to be verified, because the hour was...
I see also this problem. After 1 day, you have to create it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again.
And what happens with the configuration blueprint that we've now executed where the token's been stored? Do we have to reinitiate those again?
No. Well, no. The at your service commands I issued for creating and doing the installation of the Bootstrap and so on, you should not do it again. Eh? So you only have to do it only once. But I see your point, because they also use the JWT.
Correct.
And yeah. I don't know.
I'll let you know. I'll try and fire up another node with the same thing tomorrow and see what happens.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. Yeah, good question. We need to come back.
That's actually why I asked you. Why aren't machines authorized in itch.io Online? Or services, if you'd like.
Can you repeat the question, Arne?
Well, it's actually about trust. It's about trusting machines between each other and allowing communication. So normally you set up either an API key or something like that. But it would be a function of itch.io Online, of course, to store these trusts between applications or machines.
Machines, yeah. Clearly, something we need to go deeper on it, on how that works. So I don't know. Good question.
Nice discussion with Christoph.
Yeah. It's the discussion's getting more interesting going forward. Clearly, but clearly I have to check things myself too. I don't know. I'll follow up, and I'll share this info as I did before through the slides and through the group. And you know what, guys? These kind of questions, feel free to ask them directly in the group. And what I typically do is I ask Geert, like the other time when I was in Paris for 2 days, I saw the question of Mark. I pinged Geert, like Geert was in Cairo, like Geert, can you check with Mark? And so we are there to help you. It's not because we are doing other stuff. It's not just me. Good. Okay. Thank you all, guys. And let's close this session and let's do the follow-up work. And see you soon online. And enjoy the weekend, of course.
Thanks,
happy weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Herbert. Bye.